Welcome to another episode of The Horrific Podcast. We're two friends who live in different places but share a love for scary movies. In each episode, we both watch the same movie on our own and then record a conversation together later about what we liked, what we hated, if we were scared, and maybe even some larger truths about why people watch horror movies in the first place. The theme of this season is Back to Business. The past couple of seasons have involved deep dives on horror history, and this time around we're taking it easy with all of that, and instead focusing on talking about what is most interesting to us in each of the movies that we watch. So kick back, relax, and enjoy it with us. It's kind of been a minute since we recorded.
How long has it been?
What season is it? Are we still doing XV, or is this something new?
I think we're still on Esquire's list.
Yeah, that's a deep cut.
And it went long, too,
Yeah. We are, I think, in season 17, when we're still kind of unstructured. We're still just kind of picking movies we find interesting.
Being loosey-goosey.
Yeah, and we recorded a bunch of episodes, and we took a little time off, and had Thanksgiving with family, and it was great. And now we're coming back to it. And, for this week, I got to pick the movie, and I did a movie called MadS from this year, and it is a French horror film, and I really didn't know anything about it other than that it has shown up in discussion on the horror subreddit, which I think I've said about most of my choices this time around. But I don't talk to humans in real life. I just spend time on the internet for a few minutes a day while I'm in the bathroom generally, and then I just work, and that's my life, and that's all I have. Mm-hmm. So these are my people.
Herschel.
Well, yeah, I walk him a couple times a day too. But
he's the best boy in the world.
He is. Yeah, I'm a little partial, but I think so. But yeah, this one was there, and it's called MadS, like I said, and I didn't know anything about it, and I
didn't either.
I chose it almost entirely because I'd seen it recommended, or at least discussed, and then it was available on Shudder/AMC Plus, which my wife is still paying for, and so I knew that we both had access to it without paying anymore, and that's how we got here. And that is the sum total of my thinking about why to watch this one.
So I got three things real quick. Good. I had never heard of this before. I felt like I did after I watched it, but I definitely don't remember. Second thing, what was your favorite thing that you ate at Thanksgiving?
Well, we had a Thanksgiving dinner with my family before we went to Arkansas for my wife's family. Mm-hmm. And my dad makes these chicken steaks, which is like a kind of a fried chicken type thing. And I don't know what he did different this year, but it was absolutely on point. And then, his pumpkin pie is always the best.
Oh, man.
So that for dinner and then the pumpkin pie for dessert was something worth being thankful for this year. Man. What about you?
My favorite thing this year was the sweet potato casserole.
Okay.
It's just basically a pecan pie.
Yeah. I feel like that's a distinctly Thanksgiving dish.
On top of sweet potatoes, yeah. It was good too because it was just me, my wife, my son, and then my mom. My sister got sick. Thank the Lord.
Dodged a bullet there.
So she didn't get to come. And then my brother and his family went to her family's on Thanksgiving. And my mom's had surgery, so she can't walk or anything. Mm-hmm. She can use a scooter. It's not dramatic. It was Achilles tendon tear, but playing basketball. And
dunking on fools.
Yeah, she was. She's only 5'1". She's probably 5 foot actually now. They took out a couple extra links of that tendon. Just kidding. But anyways, it was really nice though because she couldn't get up and go thrifting or shopping or whatever. She's always doing something. She had to keep her happy ass here, and her and my son had the best time together. Literally the best time. My wife and I sat in the kitchen, just making Thanksgiving food all day because we were going to do a dinner. So we just kind of took it easy. And 90% of the day he was just chilling with my mom. So
that's awesome.
It was really exciting to see because she lives a few hours away for our listeners. So she doesn't get to see him as much. And my mom, I call her Brenda Bear because she pisses you off, but she's also the best. What was my third thing? I legitimately don't remember my third thing.
That's fine.
It pertained to where we were going to next with this, but I was just more excited when you started talking about fried chicken, my man. You said that, I started smiling, dude. I was like, oh, I know that's good.
Yeah, it was. But yeah, so my memory of this movie may be a little hazy because I watched it before Thanksgiving, and I've eaten a lot of very carby food between now and then. But
no, I'm sorry. Real quick, I got my third thing. I want to announce this because it pissed me off.
Okay.
My Shudder account was closed.
How'd that happen?
My wife thought she did it accidentally. She thought she enabled it. We don't communicate.
Yeah.
And so
that's the key to a long-term marriage from everything I've ever observed.
Yeah. And so I was going to reactivate it through Amazon, but I was like, you know what? No, I'm pissed at Amazon. Have been forever. So I'm going to go to the next evil thing and go to Apple. And so I signed up through my app on my iPhone, and I signed up through my Apple ID, which is my personal email address, and it Shudder somehow got my work email address and has been sending me the activation or like the welcome to Shudder, like all this.
Yeah.
Not tied to my personal email address I signed up with or my Apple ID at all. And somehow it's been going to my work email. So obviously I canceled it because I feel like that's some shady shit.
Mm-hmm. That's kind of creepy. I don't know. Is it Shudder or is it Apple who's creepy in this scenario?
Well, it was Shudder's email.
But you signed up for them through Apple, right?
I got 2 emails to my work email, and then I got one to my personal, and it was the same welcome to Shudder email too, just for the record. But no, it could definitely be Apple. I went ahead and canceled. I'm just going to go at AMC Plus.
Yeah, that's the way to do it.
I'm going to have, if you guys come for Christmas, I'm going to have your wife accidentally sign me up too.
Yeah, that's a good idea, because then you'll have it forever and you won't ever have to pay for a movie again.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I
was glad that you picked this though, because I feel like sometimes I just kind of pick very similar movies, and then you come in and you're like, hey, here's one that is going to require some thinking.
I like the weird ones.
Yeah.
It doesn't always pay off though. Like sometimes we end up watching Under the Skin, but sometimes we end up watching a movie like this one. So
that's true.
Was this? I don't think it is, but I can't remember another example. Was this the first French movie that we've watched?
No. You would be what the French call les incompetents, Daniel. We did High Tension.
Okay. Yes.
Hey, how did I know that?
Yes. Thank you.
You're not les incompetents. I just watched Home Alone.
Muy bien, gracias. So, yeah.
I felt like High Tension had better, like I could understand it better. These kids were mumbling this French, in this MadS movie.
Oh yeah, this was definitely, you had to be prepared to do some subtitle reading and not trying to figure out what was happening otherwise on this one. But this movie was, like I said, French, so subtitled. It was, but I don't think that was like the most unique thing about it. Like, I don't remember this movie as being a movie that I watched in French. I remember it as a movie that was like all one long camera shot.
Yeah.
And I don't, like, I know there was that episode of The Haunting of Hill House that was like that, but I can't think of another horror movie we've watched that did that. And it was really unique because I feel like it gave it almost like a found footage feel, even though that's not what it was. But like the way that they just had like the close up camera on like the characters the whole time. It really just felt like you were right there in the middle of it. Like one of the people in the action was carrying the camera for the most part.
Yeah.
And that was really interesting to me.
It was because, like part of. Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
It's just it's like it almost makes. I mean, it makes sense to a film that didn't make a ton of sense to me. Like, because obviously filming wasn't always like, you know, their friend was with them or, you know, whoever was holding the camera, but a huge chunk of the film was like they were driving past them or running past them with the camera, or, you know, just the way they did the shooting. And a movie that already has this, like, trying to go for like a intense feeling that I don't know what I'm trying to, like it was overwhelming, like anxious experience, overwhelming, like a movie that's already trying to do that, tossing that in and out. Like, it definitely, you're 100% correct. It definitely felt like a found footage through chunks of this film, during the party scene, during driving at the beginning, like multiple times. But then other times it's cinematic.
Yeah. Yeah, it really, it covered a lot of ground as far as that went. And so the basic story of this movie is kind of a classic, like, zombie story. And so, you know, you and I talk a lot about horror subgenres and what they mean and how they've changed over time and all that. But we've also talked about how you have sort of the standard subgenres. So you have like a werewolf movie, or you have a zombie movie, or you have a slasher or whatever. But then there are these cross-cutting sort of styles that can be combined with that. So like you could have the found footage movie. That's not really a subgenre, but it's like a type of subgenre-ish. Like,
because
it fits in somehow, right?
You have found footage.
It's like
killer.
a grid. Yeah. And so this one almost felt like a found footage zombie movie, but that one shot really, it's kind of like writing a haiku, where when you have limitations, you have to get creative, and that's what creates the art of it. And so even though this is definitely a zombie movie, it's not a super original story or anything from, I mean, it's definitely the lab leak zombie theory, not the wet market zombie theory. But, you know, we've seen that, right? Like 28 Days Later, this didn't come up with that idea, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
But the movie still felt super fresh and unique to me, simply because of the way that it was made. And I think that that's an exciting thing to say about a movie in 2024.
Yeah. I mean, it's almost like like reimagination of the zombies from 28 Days Later, where it's like, that was when they were affected with rage, you know, and these, I don't know what you would technically call it, but it was like they were just like, they didn't have the rage. They had the rage sometimes, but other times they were just like they just crazy, just, you know, lost it completely. And so it's almost like, okay, we have these zombies with rage. What's another type of emotion or whatever that they could, you know, that could cause this? And it kind of goes and stands true to zombies, in my opinion, because of, you know, like you were saying, is this a toxic spill zombie, or is this a, you know, Night of the Living Dead zombie? Like what causes it? So it definitely works in the lineage. And I apologize if that's what you just said. I just basically repeated it, but it just clicked with me when I said it. But I love zombie films because you could just have whatever you want. You have room to have a little bit of fun with it. Just don't have too much effing fun with it.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing that really stands out to us, is when somebody can take what is a pretty well-established genre and then do it in a new way that makes it feel creative. And that's what I meant kind of with like writing a haiku. It's like, this is a super straightforward, simple formula. So if you can, within that formula, do something that catches my attention, that's actually really, really impressive. Yeah. And so for them to take, and this one didn't strike me as high budget at all. I couldn't find any budget information about it, but I have to think it was relatively small, and they still made a really effective horror movie. So yeah, I thought that was cool. And it definitely wasn't a perfect movie. Like, the I think they did a good job of not trying to give more backstory than they were prepared to deliver. So just the way that there was like the tape recorder, so they could kind of get like the basic idea of what happened to the woman from the beginning was a good way of kind of just setting it up. But really, the movie wasn't trying to like, you know, some movies are more like suspenseful or they're trying to like mess with your mind. This one was more just about like the anxiety of being in the moment as all the stuff was happening. And they did a good job of keeping the focus on that and not trying to like over explain, I guess.
Yeah. And, you know, the way that they shot it definitely helped as well, because it was almost, in my opinion, it was almost like what you would kind of experience like at the very initial beginning of a zombie apocalypse, where, you know, people are hearing about things, like it's kind of taking place. So when you do have the camera being, you know, filmed where it's almost like found footage, or like they're right there with them, it just kind of puts you in this in with them too. My complaint is this movie is too damn dark. I couldn't see shit. I thought my TV went black multiple times, like just shut off.
Yes, it was very dark and hard to make out what was going on. Yeah. And
but that's not a big, I mean.
Yeah, and there are some times where that works okay, as far as like kind of setting up the next scene or making a thing more scary. But when you're taken out of the moment because you're trying to see what's going on, then you've gone too far. Kind of like that infamous Game of Thrones episode.
Heard that.
But yeah, I mean, just like it seemed like the camera was kind of always moving and it was always really up close to the actors. It just felt like claustrophobic. And there were some subtle things that they did where it's like, yeah, this isn't like a high budget special effect or anything crazy. Like when the main guy from the beginning first started to kind of like twitch and get more aggravated and distracted. And so it was kind of like the long, like, you know, something's wrong, but you don't really know what's going to happen yet. I thought that was great. And then when his eyes started glowing in the dark, I thought that was a really cool effect that I just wasn't expecting. And that was kind of a neat way to make him stand out and let you know that something's happening. But I feel like this one was a little bit too long in the middle, and then it became less effective to use those same techniques when it came to the other characters.
I agree.
Yeah. It's just like, then it just felt like random twitching for like the entire rest of the movie. And it's like, well, where are we going with this, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, no. Yeah, it definitely felt like after the main guy left, it seemed like there was like 10 minutes until the movie was over, with every minute that it seemed like it was about to be over. You know what I mean? Yes. And it was like, oh, you're doing this again real quick.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it definitely felt that way. I think it was also easy to kind of get lost because of the way that they filmed it, which I think definitely on purpose, but like even like following like what's being said. Like I get that, like I was just saying, it's cool to be in the room, but that's when like something intense is happening, but not like when they're just having conversations about drugs or whatever.
Right.
Like that doesn't matter to me as far as like that film style or whatever. I don't know.
And it almost feels frustrating because it's like the camera's too close.
Yeah.
In the scenarios.
Yeah. You're like, just zoom out a little bit, man. You see them pores, but yeah, I mean, I like the idea of the movie for sure, and the single shot.
Yeah,
just seems like that's like he just decided like, hey, we're gonna do this on hard mode, which is stupid. But I do think like the last thing that I think could have added just a teeny tiny bit of backstory of anything in this movie, I think would have been fine.
So I think that if you mentioned like after the guy's story ended, it just seemed like it drug on and wasn't as good. So there's the part where he's back in the house after he leaves the party. and like the lights are out and the containment team shows up and his eyes are glowing and he's twitching and hitting himself, and then there's like that pulsing bright light and that the girl from earlier comes like crawling down the hallway and stuff.
Yeah.
And then eventually he ends up getting out of there, but he's like less and less control of his body, and then he gets abducted into the black van, and then it almost hits the girl who was trying to make out with him at the party earlier, but now she's getting twitchy. And at that point it switches to like follow her through the rest of the movie. But if the movie had just ended there when you saw her like twitching, I would have called this my favorite movie of the year.
Not that far, but 100% it would have been. That would have been
a perfect horror movie, right?
Dude, that would have been killer.
Yeah, yeah. And that's not to say that there weren't some good scenes or some interesting parts later. And I do really like the way they set up that scene transition to go from like his story to her story. But it's just, man, that would have been a really, really powerful place to end the story. And then, you know, we wouldn't have to be saying the movie was too long or it got slow in some parts, you know?
Well, yeah. And, you know, also like you're not worried about tying up loose ends with this.
Right.
And so having that type of ending would have just been, yeah, that would have been sick.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, overall, I thought it was a really creatively done movie. And the way that they use the camera movement and how you would like follow the character into a scene and then the camera would kind of like work its way around them to set up the next shot was just so good and felt so natural for most of it. There was the one scene where like the girl's in the back of the limo and she just randomly switches sides on the seat so that you can see out the window for the next jump scare that's about to happen.
Yeah.
It's just like, okay, well, that one wasn't as smooth as some of the others. But outside of that, I thought it was just great. I mean, I thought everything about the way they made this movie was really, really good. Just kind of fitting together the content and filling the amount of time that they wanted to do. Maybe stretched it a little thin.
Yeah. Yeah.
So anyway, do you have anything else before we get into questions?
No, sir, I do not.
Okay. Well.
Getting up.
No, I thought you were stretching. Getting ready for this mental strain. You want to go first? Or you want me
to? I'll let you do it so I don't have to get back up and scroll.
Deal. Question number 1 for you. IMDb has this movie sitting at a 6.5 stars out of 10. How do you feel about that? Too high, too low, or just right?
So for IMDb's ratings, I feel like this should be a close 7. 6.8, 6.9. I could even understand a 7.
So you think they're pretty much just right?
Almost. Well, IMDb ratings are strange.
Yes.
Like, I definitely know people who say that they won't watch anything under 7 stars or whatever. It's just their decision. I like movies that are 2 stars, I'm sure. Yeah. But yeah, I think it's close. I think, I don't think it was the greatest of all time, but it was an entertaining watch, and that should definitely be a 7 or close to a 7 for sure. Yeah.
It just felt a little low to me. I thought it was interesting enough and felt creative enough that like I would pick it over a lot of other things that came out this year that got a little bit higher rating.
Yeah, but I think the lull that we were kind of talking about could have had something to do. There are 2 types of people who watch films, and I'm one of them, and you're the other one. And I think that's like that lull is enough for me to be like, oh, I don't know if I want to watch this again.
I get you.
You see what I'm saying? Yeah.
Yeah. Fair enough.
All right, Daniel.
If that is your real name.
Deads. Would you recommend it? And would you watch it again? But I mean, that's.
Well, I would watch it again. I think having seen the whole thing and understanding what the overarching story was a little bit better, the second time I might pick up on more because I'd be less confused. I would be very selective about who I recommended it to. I think probably most people listening to this conversation would enjoy it. Mm-hmm. If you're a fan of zombie movies, I think in general this is one that's worth watching because it's a new one that is worth talking about, right? Like it's not just a complete rehash of something you've seen a million times before. It felt like a somewhat unique experience. And yeah, I think for a lot of people though, I mean, just like your casual viewer who maybe likes elevated horror but has no tolerance for B horror, they wouldn't be down for it, and that's fine.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely think, I mean, just like how we're horror fans, that there are just like filmmaker fans, and I think this would be a good. They would be a good one to recommend this to, because it's like, hey, check this out. Now, granted, if they're fans, it might not blow their mind as much because maybe this has been done, but it tripped me out being all one shot.
Yeah, and that kind of leads into my next question, which is what's your gnarly rating on this one? Mm-hmm. And the reason I want to hear your take is because I had assumed it was like middle tier, but we have a friend staying with us temporarily due to some housing mishaps, whatever. But she absolutely has no tolerance for and cannot hang with horror movies. And she came home when I was watching this one, and I had to do like a good deal of explaining because it was like one of the bloodier scenes. She came in like, whoops. But then when I was talking about how like it was an interesting movie because it was all like the single camera shot and they had done some interesting stuff with that, she actually sat down and then watched probably the last 20 minutes or so and seemed like very much into it. And like she was visibly uncomfortable in the scene where the girl's like on the bike and the other girl is like in the alleyway behind her towards the end, and then that whole ending scene with the girl gets her leg bit and ends up shooting herself. Like obviously that didn't go over super well, but she was like very intrigued by the movie just because of the way it was made. And so I don't think that this is a thing that's only appealing to horror fans. I think there's plenty in here that also, it's just an interesting thing to watch regardless of how much you like horror. Right. So I was having a hard time figuring out like how like horrific is this? I mean, or how accessible is it to other people? So I was just curious for your take on that.
Yeah. There for a second, I thought you were going to answer the question thinking I asked it. And so I got excited. It's going to happen to one of us one of these days.
Yeah.
Probably me. So she thought it was intense and thought it was scary, so hers would probably be pretty high. Mine's a 1.
Okay.
Because I'm a crybaby, but no, I'm just kidding. I actually rated this on a scale of artsy to fartsy.
Okay.
And it would be a 9 on the fartsy scale.
I thought you were going to say 6.5.
6.5 to 6.8. No, it's a 9, which is high on the gnarly scale.
Because it's extra fartsy?
No, yeah, because it's extra fartsy, yeah. The whole self-mutilation thing. Whew.
Yeah.
Dude, and there was a scalpel, dude, and I recently picked a chunk off my finger with pliers on accident. That was a first, but then like sliced a chunk off with a knife. And so like every time that was happening, I just felt the pulse in my finger.
Yeah. So. Yeah, there were definitely some scenes in this one.
Yeah. If you had to pick one thing though, what would you say is the best thing about this? You're going to tell someone, hey, I want you to watch this film because of cinematography. Did I answer it for you?
I think that it'd be up there. I mean, just depending on who I'm talking to. If they're like, are there good horror scenes? I'd be like, yeah, the scene in the house when the containment crew shows up and then the girl is there too, kind of in the background and stuff. Like that was a really good, really scary kind of sequence, and the way that it was shot, just everything about it was perfect. But I think the whole movie the thing that, like I said in the beginning, that stood out to me was the way that it was made and how it was shot. And that was just a unique, fun experience for a zombie movie.
Nice.
Yeah. If you could do one thing to make this movie better, what would it be?
Make it brighter. Legitimately.
Yeah.
It's just too dark. I'm trying to watch things in the dark because it's, supposed to help, because one of the questions we're asking is how would you watch it? And
yeah, the right environment.
Yeah, and it was like I was sitting in a black room at times. So that was it, which is not too bad.
Yep.
I don't feel like. I have a third question for you.
I'm here for it.
No, you're not. Because we're about to have intervention, listeners, and me with you. Earlier in this podcast, did you state that you have no friends in real life that you talk to?
By real
Only
life, I
on
mean,
the internet?
How are we talking right now?
It's not. This ain't about me and you. I know, baby. We're way further than that. You have a friend. You said we have a friend staying at our house.
It's my wife's friend.
You got. I know. I just want to hear you say it. I knew exactly what it was. Sorry.
I walked right into that one.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Because I'm your only friend.
That's exactly right. That was a test. I passed.
Yeah, you did. Now it feels like I forced you to say it. Now I feel bad. Like,
you're a bully.
At least one listener is going to think that the reason why you say you only have one friend is because I'm forcing it from 8 hours away. Anyways, actual question. Do you think the lack of character backstory enhanced or weakened the story?
So I like that it felt like you were just kind of thrown into it.
Mm-hmm.
It was a little confusing when characters were introduced.
Yeah, I agree. Oh, yes.
And I think that some of it may have also been because I was looking down reading subtitles.
Yeah.
That I didn't, it was hard for me to match like who the character was with the face of the person, especially when they were in the big groups, like at the party. And yeah, I mean, it wasn't so bad that it was like overly distracting, but there were a few points where I felt really unclear on like what the relationship was between different characters.
Yeah.
And even would get a couple of them kind of confused sometimes. So being able to identify them was hard at times, but not having the backstory didn't bother me as much just because it wasn't as relevant to what was going on.
You know what I think a simple solution to that would be, and I bet they have something, or you would think...
name tags.
That's a cheaper solution.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to say if they had an option where you could put the character's name next to who says it.
Oh yeah,
like that would just
in
that,
the subtitles. Yeah,
oh
for
dude,
sure.
yeah, because it's not that. I mean, you're on a gnarly scale probably 6.9 times smarter than me, and like if you're struggling with that, it's not that we can't read. You can read. It's just like trying to piece it together. I just get lost, and it's like I don't know their voices. Who's talking now? And I got to look at their
trying to read and listen and see in the dark. This movie's asking a lot from you.
Yeah. As a group, we have a slightly higher IQ average, but that's just because yours is so high. Mine brings us down to that. It just hit me. That's what.
I don't think that's true at all.
No, because together we're smarter than slightly than most people, but only when we're combined. Couldn't imagine.
We're kind of like Captain Planet.
Yeah, man.
When
I got us off the rails.
Captain Sunset. This was a fun one. I'm glad we watched this movie. I am just so excited to have someone to talk to about it because I was taking all these notes about camera angles and shot setup and all this stuff, and I'm like, there is literally no one in my life that wants to hear any of this. And then it's like going to be like a week and a half before we record.
Yeah.
So glad we had this opportunity.
Me too. I appreciate you picking it out. The last question that we're just going to leave for you to answer, me to answer, and for the listeners to think about is Daniel and I don't buy movies full retail price because that's bullshit. We buy them on sale, okay? I'm talking $3 DVDs, $4 DVDs, $5 DVDs. How much would you buy this DVD for on sale?
I feel like this
or full
would be
price. That's an option for those,
I feel like this would be like a prime Hastings, like 3 for $10.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Yes, sir. Yeah. And because it's that diamond in the rough kind of thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
100% that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Sweet.
Yep.
All right. Well, we'll be back next week with the 1959 Mummy.
And that's it for today's episode. If you've listened this far, then thank you, and we hope you've enjoyed it. We're always looking for new ideas, so if you have any questions, comments, or movie suggestions, please send us an email at thehorrificpod@gmail.com or hit us up on the IG. That's what the kids call Instagram. Just search for The Horrific Podcast. Thanks for listening.